If you're new to ham radio or new to the HF digital side of ham radio, one of the most often areas that's overlooked is proper audio settings, whether it be from the Microsoft sound side, whether it be from your rig, or whether it be actually from the software itself. There are so many moving parts in this, and I want to break it down today to show you why it's important, because decoding matters, as well as how to use it, how to leverage it, and how to optimize your results. So if this sounds of interest to you, let's get started. Hey, this is MJ, call sign KW3KW, and welcome to another episode of Ham Radio Made Simple. Today I'm continuing the series on ham radio for prepping. This is episode number 12 with the focus on the digital HF modes. Today, part 10, I'm going over optimizing your audio HF settings. So if you're getting value from these type of videos and want others to find it easier, go ahead and hit the like and the subscribe button. And thank you for those who are taking the time to post positive comments. Just encouraging me to keep doing those. So again, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. So today's agenda, when we talk about audio settings, why does it matter? What are the key terms? What are the basics that we need to understand? What's best practice demo, which I get into on 3 different apps. I get into troubleshooting tips along the way and talk about the summary at the very end to wrap up the most salient points you need to walk away with. So when we talk about digital audio, it's different. It's kind of a mirror image when we're looking at the voice versus digital. So for example, on the voice, the ALC settings are usually 30 to 50%. And the reason why we want to do that, we want to capture the peaks when we're speaking. And so that's why you leave it at 30 to 50%. Where in the digital world, you want it barely indicating. You don't want anything really. So it's a mirror image. And think about digital modulation. Speaker settings are the transmitting and your microphones are your receiving, just the opposite again. So once you get your head wrapped around this, it starts to all make sense to you. So if you're trying to do a directed versus random call and you want to achieve better outcomes on it, this is where you need to spend some time on. Focus on your audio settings. So you want to keep your sound settings screen open. I do that just to kind of keep an eye on it and take a look at it. The real goal though is once you get it down, you can, for example, hopefully be able to get the microphone and the speaker, especially the speaker side, set where you don't have to come back and adjust it, but it takes work to do it. And I'll show you that through the video when I do actually do it here. So when we talk about the microphone, you're under the Microsoft sound settings, the control panel, recording, and properties will pull up the information that you see below to be able to actually adjust. And this happens to be, for example, recordings is your microphone, levels is a slider. This is 50%, or you can actually right mouse click this, choose dBs, and get a different indicator versus percentage. So adjust the settings continually. That's what I find, because each app is different, propagation is different, and bands are different. Again, there's different ways too. You can adjust it. You can adjust it from your rig if you have direct cat control. I do it on my IC7300. I use the AF dial on it to control the microphone. If you have a rig control such as Signal Link, you'll find that the Signal Link has 2 dials on it, and a lot of people who do digital like it because it can do the adjustments for the audio on both the receive and the transmit at the same time. Or something like DigiRig, which I use, that's not an option. But it's not a hindrance to being able to accomplish what you're doing. It's just you have to do it differently. And the thing you're going to find is, as you get into all these digital apps, when you deal with your audio settings and you deal with all of this stuff, it really takes a lot of practice and time to become a master of this. So why adjust your audio settings? Because it's all about decoding, and it's about transmitting a good code out to somebody. So you want a good clean signal with no distortion. So it's not as it seems and appears when you watch some of these other videos. It's set it, forget it, and you're pretty much off and you're done. I call it, you're playing sloppy at that point in time, because each digital app is different, and I find that some of the bands are different here. So there's a constant setting and resetting, and also depending on the propagation conditions. This is really sound card dependent, obviously, because that's your audio in it. So if you have an internal sound card, there's a whole process you can go through the internal sound and options. External sound card has its own options, and there's more than one way to do this. The reason I'm showing this is I want to point out that I was sending on WinLink, HF WinLink, VarAC, I was sending and receiving messages in poor band conditions. And by adjusting my audio settings, I was able to get it correctly. And again, for HF when you're doing the VARA, you want this basically between the 1 and 2 o'clock position. This is your microphone audio adjustments impact what you see over here. And because I was able to, now that I know what I'm doing and do it, I was able to get a much faster time. So I'm down to like 2 minutes for both sending and receiving messages. And that's because I understand audio settings much more now. So you're going to learn what is best practice for you, and you're going to optimize your outcomes by doing that. Now, there is no universal settings because there's so many moving parts. So your rig and my rig could, even though we both have the ICOM 7300s, could be different firmware, or you have the Yaesu 991A. So I can't tell you what my settings are. So your settings are going to be unique on your rig to my rig. Software versions of all of these different apps constantly keep changing. So stay up, make sure you get the latest updates on these different versions. I'm always looking every couple weeks to see if there's a newer version out. Your computer, are you on Windows 10, Windows 11? Are you on the Pro? Are you on the Home? Have you done the latest upgrades for Windows or not? Are you on an older version? All of these come into play that I can't come and say if you do this, this, and that. That's the magical numbers. Here's the formula. There is no formula other than you have to learn how to adjust yours based on your radio, your software, and your computer, and your sound card. So when we talk about a sound modem, you know, some are integrated, such as VARA, HF, FM. The thing I want to point out about the VARA is it's an integrated sound card modem. So into other software like VarAC, VARA WinLink, etc. It basically takes care of all the audio controls in it. You don't do tuning in the VARA side. You'll just try to get the ALC correct, and you're done. With VARA, that's the one I can say is set it and forget it pretty much, other than keep an eye on your ALC all times. But that's probably the simplest one that's out there. And there's many ways I'll show you in the demo. Like, for example, in VarAC, there's 2 different ways you can adjust the ALC adjustments on here. They try to build it into the app, and you can still make adjustments, like I said, but it's basically most likely going to be on the ALC side, and it's really easy to use. So again, you need to learn the right settings for your setup for each of these apps because they do it differently. Each one does. So let's do a quick refresher on some of the key terms. AF, audio frequency. The reason I bring this up is the way I set my ICOM 7300, which I'll explain here in the next couple slides, gives me the ability to adjust my receive through my microphone through the AF dial on my rig. That's where I do the fine tuning, the very fine tuning on it. It works great. And that's what it looks like right there. I'll show you how I did it. On the AFC, which is your automatic frequency control, for most of these digital apps, just turn it off, walk away, don't use it. When we talk about the AGC, automatic gain control, you want to make sure you turn that off or have it to fast if you can't turn it off. That's a constant through all of these in here. And I'll break down all of the other functions that we have to turn off along the way. ALC, automatic limiting control. This limits the RF drive levels of power the amplifier during transmit to prevent distortion. So bottom line on this one is you don't want to go into overdrive. You want to keep your ALC low, except with VarAC, they want 1/3, or VARA, I should say, VARA wants 1/3. So most of the others, the ALC is going to be barely indicating on your meter, what you see down in here. Whereas the VARA apps are going to be probably about right in here where you're going to get your signal. That's what they want. So again, let's talk about squelch. You know, it's a function muting audio output for set conditions. In your rig settings, just turn it off. I know some people use it to play with it and stuff. Just turn it off. And it's more critical when we get into the VHF digital modes, which I'll get into in my next video. So what you're seeing here is like the different signal levels in Fldigi. And what you're looking at here, when it gets red in the bottom corner of that diamond at within the app itself, you're doing overdrive. You don't want that. Yellow means you're kind of fluttering toward it. What you want is to get the green. So overdrive is not good because it can actually cause not only splatter but damage your sound card. So it's important not to overdrive. That means, simply put, keep your microphone levels lower, not higher. When it comes to adjusting your audio levels, there's more than one way to do this. For example, you can go into Microsoft Sound Settings and adjust both your levels for your receiving and transmitting, which we'll get into here. You can do it through a sound card such as SignalLink, which offers both the dials for controls over transmission and receiving. Now, I used DigiRig. It doesn't have those capabilities, but I use the others, works just as well. But it's a nice to have, not a must to have those extra dials. The way you set up your rig with your sound settings in there is going to help you do a lot of this a lot easier. And for example, I set my accessories USB AF output level. I do it at 100%. The reason I do that is it's the purest, least distorted signal that's going from my radio to my computer. So I set that at 100%, which helps. And I just have to use the AF setting on the dial, which you can just see like a little bit right over in here. I just adjust the dial and it automatically adjusts it. And within the app, and I'll get into each of these apps and where you adjust, both on the right here, you can see this. This is what I'm looking for, the meter to make my adjustments for the receiving end. And this is the transmit end or your speaker settings within the apps. Again, so you can do in the app, within your rig itself, in a sound card if it's available, and in computer settings. So a lot of moving pieces, all different ways to do this. Now, as far as universal settings, make sure, again, you turn off. You don't want on your notch filter, your noise blanker, your noise reduction, your preamp, your AGC off or fast is what you want for all these settings, and bandwidth is wide. So one of the things you always want to pay attention to is within your sound devices, you're making sure that these are correct. For USB audio codec, that's usually typically you're going to see that on an internal sound card as well as the signal link. It'll say P&P or plug and play audio codecs when you're using something like a DigiRig, for example. But those can change on you at any given moment. Can't explain why, but again, always check those settings before you're doing some heavy work on your HF digital apps. Now, on the Windows sound settings itself, there are some common stuff you just leave alone, and I'll walk you through in the demo. Just leave it off. You want to make sure that your audio enhancements aren't on. Leave the defaults as they are. Keep an eye on disabled all enhancements. When Windows does an update, it has a tendency to re-enable that. Don't know why. Use the master sound slider. For example, if you're using Windows 11 and you want to use this screen, don't use the left channel, right channel to make the changes. Use the master one. Personally, I don't go on this one. I'll show you what I use. I go actually into the sound control panel itself, which is something like this. And what I'm able to do then is go under the speaker properties and adjust the levels right in here. I get out of Windows 11 and pull this up, and I'll show you how to do that here shortly. So this is what I want to see, and this is what a lot of you are most used to using. But if you went to Windows 11, all of a sudden you realize, I just don't like the user interface at all. I guess you can tell I'm not a big fan of Windows 11. Anyhow, if you open up Windows 11 System Sound, if you go down here, there is a little icon that basically looks like an arrow with a box in it. If you click that on, this pops up. I close this out, I leave this on. And for Windows 10, you go to Settings, Sound Control Panel, same thing. So universal, this is what we want to leave open. Everything else you can close around the windows to get there. So what you're seeing under playback on the sound is your speakers, the recording is your microphone. Pretty simple. JSA call settings and WSJT-X are pretty much the same. They're basically saying take your ALC and keep it as low as possible so you don't distort the tones. And you may not be able to be decoded or heard. So again, ALC barely showing, indicating. Most of these apps are saying that. And the sweet spots between 30 and 60 decibels on the left side, I'll show you here in just a second, of the software app. Typically, I'm going around 50, 55. You can find out what works best for you in order to capture the signal and have it decode correctly. So when I talk about the left side in here, this is the microphone adjustment, receiving, decoding. This and JSA call are pretty much identical, pretty much built off the same type of platform. And over here is your speaker adjustment, which is basically your transmission side. And so here you can make adjustments in the software to adjust your ALC with hit the tune button. But the microphone adjustments, the way you're doing that is either off your rig on the AF if you're using that, or the Microsoft sound settings itself. JSA call, does it look familiar? Same thing. Microphone adjustments for decoding, speaker adjustments for transmitting. Fldigi sound card, it's different. So what you really have, you have your meter at the bottom, and this is where, again, this is your receiving and your decoding of the signal coming in. And to adjust your ALC, your speaker adjustments, you want for the low distortion, you could do it here, right at the bottom, in the bottom corner here. I typically leave my squelch off unless I really need to turn it on, and always the AFC stays off. So when you do a deeper dive in here, what I'm suggesting is that if you can do direct cat control, use your AF controls in order, your audio frequency, in order to get it to work correctly. And in Windows 11, you're going to see you can use the input volume there. But again, I like to use the Microsoft settings in the older version, the look of it, the one I showed you recently. So under levels, microphone, I adjust this. And actually in the demo, I'm going to show you how to get this set at 30 for most of these apps so that you don't have to keep switching this. And again, trying to get to that 30 to 60, which we are here, showing you above. So how do you improve the decoding? Well, when you do an Fldigi, what you want to do is make sure you go under configurations, tab. You want to go down to signal levels, and then you're going to want to make sure that the WSJT-X button is checked. Now it has the same scale that you used to expecting out of the other two apps I just showed you. Again, standardized, keep it simple. So when you notice on this down here at the bottom is green, okay? Well, green means normal. Yellow means you're out of range, which is not good. You want to get back to green. Black is too low. Red is overdrive. Don't want overdrive. So how do you control that? You control your microphone settings. You dial it back. Typically, it's too high. When you're going high into over, you want a lower decibel rating for your microphone. So when we look at the speaker side of it here in Fldigi, again, they have built-in controls to adjust the ALC. It's either up, down, or up. These two buttons on the outside. I don't mess with the 0.0, the 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. Typically here or here, and I just want so that my ALC peaks over and then drops back, and then I know I'm done. That's in there. Again, Windows 11. Again, I don't like Windows 11, but once I get to this one screen in here, the microphone adjustments, excuse me, the speaker adjustment is where I would take this and I would slide this back. And again, I'm keeping mine at around 30. So manual's recommendation, pretty much, sweet spot 30 to 60 dB because we're using the WSJT-X meters that are in there, as long as you have that clicked. By the way, here's just a rabbit trail. I'm putting this in here. If your rig does not transmit and you are trying to figure out what's going on, but you see the signal going across, what you need to do is use the under hand lib. You want to make sure that you select the push to talk via hand lib control if you're using hand lib. This is just one way of showing you how to fix a problem. There's a couple other areas, but this is the most common one. Try this one first. Let's talk a little bit about the VarAC sound settings. We'll start first with the microphone, how you make your adjustments. You're going to look at the screen, the modem screen from the VarAC HF, and in order to do the microphone adjustments, which is your receiving and decoding, you need to keep an eye on the dial where it says audio input right in here. So what we want to do is get this basically between the 1 and 2 o'clock position, and you do that by increasing or decreasing your mic volume. And so basically, again, if you go to your Windows sound settings and you're under the microphone properties, under levels, this is where you can adjust this back and forth to get the optimal results that you want. And in my case, because I'm doing direct cat control with the ICOM 7300, the way I've set it up is at this point, I would probably be using my AF audio frequency dial to adjust it and get it set done, correctly and exactly where I would want it. Now, when we try to do more on the transmitting side with the speaker, where you're looking at the speaker adjustments, you need to keep it at 1/3. All the other apps I've been showing you all say barely show on the ALC. This one is basically recommending 1/3 on your meter. So that's what they want to see. And how you do it, you hit the tune button, again, but make sure your device input and device output are correct. Hit the tune, your rig should engage, and basically you want to get it to 1/3, and you basically do that through the sound settings within Microsoft. So now you're doing at the speaker side and moving the slider back and forth to try to optimize the settings that are in there to 1/3. There is a second speaker adjustment that you can do within VarAC. And if you look over here and it says the tune button, if you hit the tune there, and I'll get into the demo. I'll show you both of this in the demo in here. And you can slide the tuner button, that blue button, back and forth until you get it to the right settings. They do match up. They're not opposite of each other or different from each other. They are exactly the same from my experiments. So again, you know, ALC barely 0, except VARA we want 1/3. Just remember that. So now it's time to get into the demo. And I'll go through all of this, and I think it's going to start to make sense when you can actually see what I'm doing. So let's get started. In this next section, I'm going to do 3 quick demos of audio controls within JSA Call, Fldigi, and VarAC. They're all different, so you kind of get a perspective. And I'm going to show you some tips. What you're trying to do is to make it minimal settings going forward by doing the correct settings right to begin with when you get started. So first thing we're going to do is go to the icon in the bottom left with the speaker. We're going to go ahead and hit Open Sound Settings. And then we're going to go to Sound Control Panel on the top right side over here. I'm going to open that up. And at this point, whether it's Windows 10, Windows 11, you want to see this. This is what you're looking for. And in this, we're going to go down and use the USB audio codec. And I renamed it and did a different icon for me to easily pick that up. And so if I click it, hit Properties, or you can just double click it so you can save a step on here. Well, levels, I'm going to start at 50. We're going to actually get this down to 30. And by doing, if I can get my speakers all at 30 for all my apps, then it's one less thing I have to adjust by using some of the software tools itself. Enhancements, always make sure it's disabled, all enhancements. That will change when you get a Windows update. So you have to come back and make sure that you keep an eye on this. Advanced is default, and the spatial sounds are default. So everything looks good on the speaker side. Let's go on the microphone side. And if we go down to the microphone side, you can see it again. USB audio codec. This is, and again, I renamed it, put a different icon in there. I'm going to click it and hit Properties. My listen level is, I put this on here. Listen to this device. Don't check that. Otherwise, you'll hear the sound coming through the system on that, and run on battery power. Levels, I left it at 50%. Again, we're going to adjust that. And advanced is pretty much default, is what you see in here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, leave that alone. Let's go ahead and open up JSA Call. And when you look at JSA Call, over here on the right side is your transmission speaker side, okay? This is your decoding side and your audio receive side. So don't freak out when you don't see anything showing up. I found that if you just hit the tune button once, let it run for like 2 or 3 seconds, turn it off, and now all of a sudden it's going to appear. Again, I don't know what, must be either my computer, my version, whatever. I'm not sure it's technically a bug in their system, probably something on my end. But if that happens to you, that's all you need to do. So we're going to focus on the transmission side first, and this is where we're going to do with the speaker controls. So you need to hit the tune first, and then we're going to go back to the sound card settings, and we want to go back to the speaker, USB audio codec. And unfortunately, I can't show you my ALC in real time in here, but it's like 1/4 of the way up there. So if I go under levels, and if I can drop this down to, let's see, I'm going to do 30. Okay, and then I'm going to use this to get it to where it's the slider, where it just barely you see it in and out, and there it goes. So I left it at 30, and that should be good, hopefully, for the next programs, that I'm going to be showing you. But this is the fine-tuning where I put in here. I'm going to turn the tune off. So we're good on our transmission. We're perfect on our ALC settings. Next, we want to do is focus on the receiving side of it. So what we need to do is go back to our sound control. And I'm going to go over to recordings. I'm going to go USB audio codec. And under levels. Now, if I drop this, if I take this all the way up, you can see it actually, this is an overdrive, it's in red. And down here, it's too low. So if I get it so I can get it down a little bit, let's just try to work our way down. 28, 29, 30, and about 50. Now, I can use my AF button on my rig, and I'm going to just get it exactly where I want it, right there. That way I can leave, I want it around 50, 55. I'm going to leave this. I don't have to touch this again. So once I hit OK, I'm pretty much, that's it. Audio controls are done. So not too hard. And now I've got the perfect settings for coding and decoding. So I'm going to go ahead and close this now. Let's open up Fldigi, and it's totally different. So let's see here if it opens. I'll do the 1.27. Open this. And again, on this one, if you ever see it where it kind of covers up part of the screen on your taskbar, if you just go up to the maximize button up here, you hit it once, it does the perfect fit within the window screen. When you're looking at the settings down in here, this is your ALC settings over here. This is what you're seeing on your microphone down here in the bottom right. So we'll do the speakers first. What I'm going to do is hit the tune button and look at my ALC on my rig. And I can adjust it by going this way, and I'm not seeing anything, which is good. And I'll go back the other way. And now my ALC is about 1/4. I'm going to back it off. I'm going to go 1/8 and just barely over. That's at 14. You'll see some people say 3 and 3 is good. Well, maybe for their system it's not. You really need to pay attention to this. The other way you can adjust it too is also go back to your sound card. You can go under playback, speakers, and I could go to my levels. Now, the reason I kept it at 30 so I wouldn't have to do this again, and I used the internal one. But just so, if you could watch this, if I would adjust this up, my ALC is going to change again. But because I'm trying to keep it at 30, I'm using the internal software tools to adjust it. Makes it really nice and easy. So I'm going to try to leave that at 30. I'm going to turn the tune off. And now we've got our transmission speaker side set correctly. Now let's go over and look at our microphone. What I want to first recommend is go under Configure Dialog. This is what I showed you earlier. We're going to go under the sound card, and we want signal levels. And when you're using JSA call, for example, they use the WSJT-X scale. So you want to make sure that's checked. Once you get that done, and I always just go in and look under devices just to make sure that the USB audio codec is listed correctly. That's in here with the port audio. For some reason, I don't know, sometimes this gets changed and you're confused as to why you're transmitting and nothing's going out. This is one of the problem areas in here. This has a tendency to go back to the default speakers in there. But anyhow, hit save. That's why you don't want default speakers listed for the audio codecs. It'll go back to that. So I'm going to hit save. I'm going to hit close. And now what I'm going to do is adjust this. That looks pretty good. So if I go back to my recording side, which is my microphone, and I'm going to choose the USB audio codec, go to properties, go to levels. Again, I left it at 30 because it looks pretty good here, but watch what happens if I adjust it. Now it's going way up. You can see it up over past 80. Again, what you're looking at is down here at the bottom, the green bar. Watch that. And let's get it back to, I'll use my arrows just to go back to 30. And I can also, again, use my AF dial on my rig, and I can take it way down or bring it back to where I want. I prefer to use on the ICOM 7300, if you use it, your AF dial on your rig to do the fine tuning, and try to leave this as much alone as possible once you get it all set up. So I'm going to hit OK, and you're ready. And this is where you, especially with Fldigi, if you're not decoding right, that's one of the areas. The other areas is when you're squelch. If you squelch off, it's going to bring everything in. And when you're working with the squelch, you really need to adjust the slider up and down. Is another area to help improve your decoding on it. So again, this needs to stay green. If you see this yellow, you're getting on the borderline of overdrive. If it goes to red on this diamond, you're in overdrive. Black means it's too low of settings, and you've got to increase the sound settings in order for it to have the adequate reading that you see down in here in order for it to go out and be able to decode correctly. So this is microphone, and this over here that you see in here is your speakers adjustments. So I think we're good with that one. And by the way, one of the things I like to do is when I do make adjustments, I go under Configure, Save Configurations. So anything I did that I like right now, it's saved, especially like what you see down in here. So let's just go ahead and close that one out. Confirm, quit, yep. The final app we're going to do is the VarAC, and I'm in version 8.06. So if this looks new and different to you, because the newest version basically came up with some more changes on it. But how to set the audio settings are exactly the same. For example, to do the, what we want to do is the speakers, which is your transmit. We're going to do the ALC settings. We're going to go to sound card, and we're going to go to make sure our input output devices are USB audio codec. I hit the tune, and I'm trying to move the slider till I get 1/3. And so since I've already done it, I know that -4 actually gets me to the 1/3. I hit the stop. I can close this. I can also go over to the tune button over here. If you go the hover over, it says set the VARA modem ALC level and keys to push to talk to test it. But you have to have a more recent version of VARA and the VARA technical license. So I can go ahead and click this on, and I can move it back and forth, but I know it's probably right about there, same thing, and it's -4 dB. Hit the stop. And again, so I just showed you 2 ways to adjust your transmission through your speakers, is through the VARA sound card, and in this particular case up here within the app. Now to do the microphone, and let's pull this back up. This is your microphone right in here, and you want to be between the 1 and 2 o'clock settings. I can, for example, take my AF dial and go way too high, or I can back it off, and I'm just going to back it down. Actually, I'll go a little bit too high. Actually, I would prefer to go too high. Yep. And then what I'll just show you is now if I use my sound setting here, I'm going to recordings, and I'm going to go to USB audio codec, double click, go to levels. If I cut this back, you can see if I go all the way back, it really drops off. So simple as just using the microphone settings. I'm just go right about there, and that's perfect, happens to be. So this is not going to be the same for WSJT-X, JSA call, Fldigi. So sometimes some of these are going to be different, and that's why I tend to leave this window open. Hit OK, and at this point, we're pretty much done. It's simple as that, how to make the audio adjustments. I'll just minimize that, and you're ready to use it with your settings correct. So let's get back and wrap up with the summary. Let's kind of summarize quickly what some of the most important points you need to walk away with. Remember, the digital side is kind of a mirror image of the voice. So your microphone is for receiving, decoding. Your speakers are for transmitting, sending messages. Make sure you know your digital app settings, particularly the sweet spots that you need, for example, within the microphone, how many dBs it should operate in. Keep your ALC under control at all times. I personally like to keep my sound mic window open so I can make adjustments on the fly. When I'm doing directed calls, I will spend more time trying to do fine tuning because I know that things that I couldn't get through are now getting through. And bottom line is have fun, practice, and pass this information on to others. That's why I do this video is I learn it. I want to share what I have. And if you've learned something that I haven't, put it in the comments below. I appreciate those who are helping me grow as much as I'm helping you grow. So my next video is going to be on VHF FM digital, which I'm excited about because I got it working. I'm going to go over my Palomar, the off-center fed dipole. This is a base station antenna, which is for my long DXing. Again, a game changer for me, being able to reach people out on the West Coast with digital. JSA call from a prepper's use. There's a lot of people how to use JSA call, but I'm going to get into from a prepper's use. And I'm going to also probably wind up doing a group MCOM plan, showing you what I put together for our group on MCOM in case stuff hits the fan, how to set it up, how to execute it. So again, I'm really having a lot of fun learning all of this stuff, and hopefully you are too. So I appreciate you, and I thank you for those who have stayed this point. Again, reminder, hit the like, the subscribe button, and any comments. I greatly appreciate hearing from you guys. So this is MJ, call sign KW3KW with Ham Radio Made Simple, out.